Imagine waking up every morning knowing that today might be the day you get robbed, arrested, or killed. And the worst part is, you're only making $12 an hour. That's the reality for most people at the bottom of the methamphetamine trade. We've all seen the glamorized versions, the TV shows, the movies, the rap lyrics. But nobody talks about what this life actually looks like rank by rank, from the guy standing on a corner at 2 a.m. to the person who never touches the product at all. Today, we're going to walk through every level of this hierarchy, what each role actually pays, what kills people at each stage, and why the math almost never works out the way people think it will. Rank 1. The runner. At the very bottom of the operation sits the runner, sometimes called a mule, a go-between, or just the kid. And that last word is deliberate, because runners are often teenagers. Recruiters target them specifically because juveniles face lighter sentences, because they're desperate for money, and because they haven't yet developed the pattern recognition to see when they're being used. A runner doesn't sell anything. Their entire job is logistics, picking up a package from one location and delivering it to another, no questions asked. They might carry cash from a street dealer back to a mid-level distributor, or shuttle small quantities of product between stash houses. They don't know who's above them in the chain. That's by design. How does someone end up here? Usually through proximity. A cousin who's already in the game. A friend from school who starts offering cash for small favors. Sometimes it's survival. A kid aging out of foster care with no money and nowhere to go, who gets approached by someone offering easy work. The entry barrier is essentially zero, which should tell you something. Daily life as a runner is grinding and paranoid. You're on call at unpredictable hours, sometimes 11 p.m., sometimes 3 a.m. You carry things you can't look at in bags you can't open. You get paid per trip, usually between $50 and $100 a run, which sounds decent until you realize you might only get called 2 or 3 times a week. Annualized, that's less than a part-time minimum wage job, except this job can get you arrested, beaten, or killed. The specific danger at this level is that runners are sacrificial. If law enforcement is watching, you're the person they arrest. If someone wants to rob the supply chain, you're the easiest target. You know nothing about who you're working for, which means you can't give police anything useful, which means you're disposable. Moving up from runner requires proving your reliability and, more critically, your silence. If you get arrested and you don't talk, you might get promoted when you get out. If you consistently complete drops without incident and start building trust with the person above you, they may eventually give you a territory of your own. Rank 2. The street dealer. This is the rank most people picture when they imagine a drug dealer. Someone with a phone, a territory, and direct contact with the user. Street dealers, sometimes called slingers or traps, are the retail floor of the operation. They're the ones taking the actual risk of hand-to-hand transactions every day. Street dealers buy their product from someone above them at a wholesale price and sell it at retail, keeping the margin. A gram of meth might cost them $20 from their supplier and get sold for $60 to $80 on the street. Sounds like a good margin until you account for everything else. Fronting product to users who don't pay back, getting robbed, having products seized, and the constant overhead of keeping customers happy and competition off your corner. Realistically, a mid-level street dealer in a mid-size American city might clear somewhere between $500 and $1,500 a week before losses. Research from economist Stephen Levitt, who studied actual drug gang financial records, found that the average street-level dealer earned less than minimum wage when accounting for risk and hours. You are working long, unpredictable hours in dangerous conditions for poverty wages. The dangers here multiply dramatically compared to the runner. You're the person holding the product when police drive by. You're the person rival dealers want to push off the corner. In cities where meth has displaced other drugs, turf conflicts are frequent and violent. Street dealers are also heavily exposed to their own product. Prolonged time in the trade correlates with addiction rates that are extraordinarily high, creating a feedback loop where people start using what they sell, then spend their profits on their habit, trapping themselves deeper in the operation just to sustain both the business and the addiction. Advancement here requires either money or violence, building up enough profit to purchase larger quantities, or developing a reputation that clears competitors out of your way. Many street dealers never advance, either because the operation above them is static or because addiction consumes their ability to execute. Rank 3. The mid-level distributor. Now we start seeing some real money and some very different problems. The mid-level distributor, sometimes called the wholesale supplier or the connect, sits between the street and the source. They don't deal directly with users. They sell weight, ounces, half pounds, pounds, to the street dealers below them, and they purchase from the upper level of the operation above. Getting to this rank requires capital. You need enough money to purchase large quantities up front, which means either years of savings from lower ranks, or being brought in at this level by someone who already trusts you. Former military, people with logistics backgrounds, or individuals connected to the source supply sometimes enter here directly. This is also the rank where people with business skills, people who can manage inventory, relationships, and cash flow, start to thrive over people who are just street tough. A mid-level distributor in an active market might move several pounds per week, generating gross revenue in the tens of thousands of dollars. Net income after purchasing product, paying subordinates, and covering operational costs, safe houses, burner phones, vehicles, bribes, might land somewhere between $5,000 and $15,000 a month. For the first time in the hierarchy, this actually looks like a viable income. That's exactly what makes it so seductive and so dangerous. The danger profile shifts entirely. Police at this level aren't just watching for hand-to-hand buys, they're building conspiracy cases, RICO charges, wiretaps, controlled buys using informants who are almost always people from the rank below you who got arrested and flipped. The mid-level distributor is the primary target of most federal drug investigations because they're the linchpin between the ground operation and the supply chain. Take them out and both sides of the network falter. At this level, a conviction typically means 8 to 20 years in federal prison. Mandatory minimums make judicial discretion nearly irrelevant. Rank 4. The regional boss. The regional boss controls distribution across an entire metropolitan area, a county corridor, or a regional zone. They have multiple mid-level distributors working beneath them, and a direct relationship with supply, either a cartel connection, a large-scale domestic manufacturer, or an international import network. They rarely touch product. They deal almost exclusively in relationships, money management, and territory enforcement. Income at this level can genuinely reach hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. The lifestyle becomes visible. Real estate, cars, businesses used for laundering. But this visibility is itself a weapon law enforcement uses against them. Unexplained assets. Lifestyle inconsistent with reported income. Financial forensics become the tool of prosecution more than surveillance. The regional boss lives under permanent threat from 3 directions simultaneously: law enforcement building federal cases, rival organizations that want their territory, and their own subordinates who might decide that eliminating the boss is a promotion. Violence at this level is strategic and often outsourced, which means maintaining loyalty through a combination of pay, fear, and protection becomes a full-time management challenge. Rank 5. The cartel supplier. At the apex sits the supply source. In the contemporary American meth market, this almost universally means connection to Mexican transnational criminal organizations, primarily the Sinaloa cartel and the Jalisco New Generation cartel, which now control the overwhelming majority of methamphetamine entering the United States. These organizations synthesize meth in industrial-scale laboratories using precursor chemicals sourced globally, then move product across the southern border through established smuggling corridors. The individuals at this level are largely insulated from American law enforcement by geography, resources, and layers of intermediaries. They generate income that operates at a different order of magnitude entirely, hundreds of millions of dollars annually for major trafficking networks. They operate within a parallel power structure that includes corruption of local officials, private security forces, and the capacity for organized violence at a scale that resembles paramilitary operations. For anyone watching this video who's in the lower ranks imagining that this is where the story leads, understand that the path between street corner and cartel leadership is not a career ladder anyone actually climbs. These organizations are not meritocracies open to American street dealers. The supply level is a separate world. The trap. Every piece of research confirms the same thing. The math doesn't work. Risk concentrates at the bottom, money concentrates at the top, and the people at the bottom are designed to be disposable. The average street-level dealer earns less than minimum wage when you factor in the hours and the danger. The average conviction carries years, sometimes decades. The hierarchy is built to feel like a ladder while actually functioning like a cage. The way out is rarely up, it's sideways, and it almost always requires help that this life will never provide.